welcome back. This is Ross Izzard, and this is the Backcountry Fly Fishing Podcast, where we talk about fly fishing in more interesting places. So last week we covered a whole bunch of ground. We talked about what exactly I define as backcountry fly fishing, which, just as a reminder, is any kind of fishing that requires you to use specialized non-fishing equipment to access, whether that's a 4x4 vehicle or a pair of hiking boots or a backpacking bag or a tent, whatever. If you need something that is not explicitly fishing related to get there safely, it's probably backcountry fishing. There's probably some other stuff that counts as backcountry fishing too, but for sure, if you need that equipment, I think we can pretty safely say that you are in the backcountry and doing something that looks like backcountry fly fishing. We covered the 5 different difficulty ratings for backcountry fly fishing, or fly fishing in general, I should say, ranging from very easy, you hop out of your car, you get in the river, to pretty darn hard, you're having to navigate up a mountain off trail. And then we talked about what was supposed to be the 5 guiding principles of fly fishing. It was pointed out to me after the fact that I said there were 5 guiding principles. I actually thought there were 5 guiding principles, but in fact there were 6 guiding principles. So this is why I am a fly fisherman and not a mathematician or a rocket scientist. It's because I can't count and I barely finished kindergarten. So thank you for pointing that out to me. I am sorry for my numerical deficiencies, but also you're welcome. You got an extra guiding principle that maybe will help you make better decisions when you're making trips and planning trips into the backcountry. So you're welcome, even though I can't count. So welcome back. Today we're going to talk about a topic that is very important and talked about too rarely. So very often people on forums or on social media sites or anywhere else will ask, well, what do I need in the backcountry? What do I even need to bring with me? What's your setup? What do you carry with you when you are hiking? I get this question online. I get it from people in my personal life who hear about what I like to do for fun. And it's one of those things where you might be able to piece stuff together from backpacking sites and hiking sites and fishing sites and hunting sites, but there's not a lot of really cohesive information out there about exactly what you should have on you when you are going for a day of fly fishing in the wilderness. So I should specify that today, this is the day trip edition. We're going to talk about just what I have on me when I go on a day trip. And day trip is defined as any trip that I do, doesn't really matter how far out or how remote it is, where I am not expecting to spend the night, right? So it might start in the dark. It might start at 3 or 4 in the morning because of the weather here in Colorado, depending on the elevation I'm hiking to and how far I'm going. It might not end until sunset or slightly after dark. So it could be a real long day, but it is not a situation where I am planning to camp. Not bringing a tent, probably not really bringing a serious shelter, not carrying a backpacking bag. I am just out there for the day, no matter how long it is, to catch some fish in a real interesting place. Okay, so that's the day trip side. This is the way that I set up my pack. Hiking, as most of you who spend any time in the outdoors know, is an intensely personal pursuit, like a lot of hobbies, right? Fishing is too. Everybody has the gear that they like best. Everybody has the setup that they trust the most. Everybody has their preferences when it comes to how they do this outdoor stuff that we like to do. These are my preferences, and I will tell you up front, these are preferences that were not developed just because I'm a crazy and somewhat OCD redhead who likes his stuff to be exactly the way it's supposed to be. That's part of it, for sure. I'm not going to deny it. But a lot of it was trial and error. I think I mentioned on episode 2, when I started doing this, nobody really taught me this stuff. I wasn't going out there with anybody in most cases. I was just doing it alone. And I had a lot of really tough, and looking back on it, probably pretty dangerous days where I was out there and I was either undergeared or I was overgeared or I didn't have the right stuff or my equipment was wrong. And at the very least, it was an inconvenience and it was unpleasant and it took the fun out of what could have otherwise been really cool, memorable, fun trips. And in other cases, I really might have gotten myself in trouble. Now, I didn't. I'm obviously sitting here and talking to you on a microphone. I survived. I have both my legs. I have both my arms. I can see out of both my eyes. My back is intact, so nothing bad has happened. I haven't been mauled by anything. I mean, I'm okay. But like we talked about last time, the fact that you're okay most of the time doesn't mean you're going to be okay every time. I got lucky, right? I was stupid. I wasn't paying attention. I was ignorant, not educated about this stuff. And if I'm being honest, I got lucky. I'd like to attribute that to me being a really tough, heroic woodsman. Probably not. I probably just got lucky. And on any one of those days when I was out there not knowing what the hell I was doing, very different outcome might have occurred. And I may or may not have had the gear to deal with it. That would have been a problem. So I'm glad it didn't happen. But over time, it has allowed me to refine a system that really works pretty well for me. This is a system that I feel comfortable taking many miles off into the wilderness, including off trail into pretty difficult places where if I were to get into trouble, I would be on my own for at a minimum hours, possibly days. Um, it is something that is lightweight enough and comfortable enough for me to carry for a full day of wading in a stream. And I should mention that I typically do not like to carry a real heavy backpack in and ditch it at the side of a river and then fish 3 miles up the river and then walk 3 miles back and get it and then hike out because I just don't have time for it. I'm usually pretty tired after I do that, particularly with wading in those kind of fast mountain streams. So I like to have something that I can carry with me on my person for the entire day if necessary. And that might mean that I have that thing on my back with only a few exceptions for breaks or snacks or whatever for 12 hours, 13 hours, 14 hours straight. And coming up with a system that is complete and comfortable enough to do that with, it's been a process and not a super easy process. I'm still a little sore at the end of the day. I'm not going to say that you ever really get used to having weight hanging on you for, that length of time, but you can do it pretty comfortably for almost all situations. So, this is how I do it. These are the things that I carry. You can do your thing, but I would probably argue, even though I'm pretty flexible on this stuff, most of this is not really optional. And if you want to leave some of it out, you can. It might mean that you have a bad time. Some of them might mean that you have a really embarrassing bad time. Some of them might mean that you have a really dangerous or physically painful bad time. So you do what you want to do. You're a free person or in a free country. You certainly don't have to do it my way. But think carefully, going back to that first guiding principle of safety first. Think carefully about what you leave out of your day pack, especially if you're trying to count ounces and get down to a certain weight. So, with that, let's get started. I've got a big long list of stuff. I'm going to tell you up front. All of this stuff combined weighs about 22 pounds fully loaded on my back. And get it a little bit lower, but 22 pounds, it's about what it weighs for a day of fishing. Not the lightest, not the heaviest, certainly doable for a day if you're in decent shape. It's going to sound like a lot to you, but it's definitely doable if you're smart about it and you have the right pack. So here we go. As far as the backpack itself, I carry a 26-liter fish pond fire hole. They're not paying me to tell you about the fish pond fire hole. Fish pond doesn't know that I exist. They don't care that I exist, and they don't care what I think. I have tried a whole bunch of different backpacks. I've tried smaller fish pond packs. I've tried bigger random hiking packs. I've tried dedicated ultralight packs. The fire hole has been the best pack that I have used for a few different reasons that are worth you thinking about with a day pack or a backpack that you're going to have on for a day trip. Number one, you don't need a huge one, right? You don't need like a 50-liter backpacking backpack with a frame for a day of fishing if you're not going to be staying out there. Could you carry it? Yeah, you could. It's a lot more weight than you need. It's probably not going to be that comfortable or that convenient. It's just probably not the right thing. So that kind of 20 to 30 liter range is kind of all you need for one of these trips. It's got a lot of really good features that make it comfortable. So whenever you're looking for a backpack, you really want hip straps. You don't want to get a backpack for day hiking. I don't even care if it's easy day hiking. You really don't want a backpack that doesn't have hip straps. And the reason for that is if you don't have hip straps, you are going to put all of that weight directly into your shoulders and directly into your traps. And it is going to feel like somebody karate chopped the top of your shoulders as soon as you take that thing off at the end of the day, because those muscles really are not strong enough and were not physiologically designed to carry that kind of weight for a really extended period of time. When you have a hip strap, particularly some good, heavy, kind of thick hip straps, they're padded around your hips. They sit right on the crest of your hips, which allows you to cinch them down, and it transfers the vast majority of the weight. Obviously, gravity exists, weight goes downward. So it transfers the weight at the bottom of the pack into your hips and into your thighs and into your butt, which are much, much bigger, much, much stronger muscles that are much better equipped to carry lots of weight all day. That's what they do, right? A lot of us aren't that small. I weigh 210. My muscles carry me around all day, every day, right? They're designed for that, to keep you upright and to carry it. And very often you'll find that you don't notice weight, even with really heavy packs, 40, 50, 60 pounds. They're not super uncomfortable when the weight's on your hips. You throw that same amount of weight on your shoulders, boy, it's going to suck. It's going to suck while you're hiking, and it's really going to suck when you get back. So you want hip straps, and this backpack has them. You want to have comfortable shoulder straps, right? So you don't want these to be like the ultra thin mesh shoulder straps that have no padding and no support on them. You might be able to get away with that on some trips, but the truth is you want comfortable shoulder straps that come with a chest strap to kind of hold them together across your chest, just so they distribute the little bit of weight. They might have 20% of the pack's weight in them. You really want to be able to distribute those thoughtfully and efficiently across your shoulders and across your back. And if you have those little flimsy straps, they're going to dig into you. The seams are going to start hurting over time. They're just not very comfortable. So get good padded straps with that chest strap to make sure that they stay in the right position and don't slip out to your shoulder tips. And then you're going to want a hydration pouch, right? So you need to have some place to put your water. I know they have water bottle holders on the side. Fine, you can use that for a water bottle if you want. We're actually going to use it for something different here in a few minutes, which we'll talk about. So they have other uses that are, I think, better choices. And also, a Nalgene bottle is not enough water for you. You're going to have to stop and filter all the time. And even if you do stop and filter all the time, you're probably not going to drink enough water, because water filtering is annoying. If you've ever had to do it, you have to find the stream. You go to it, you get the water. It takes a minute to fill up the bag. If you have a squeeze filter, it takes several bags to squeeze it in and fill your water bottle up. Or you do a gravity filter and it takes forever. We'll talk more about those in a minute. But either way, it's kind of not the most convenient thing to do. Eventually, you're going to get annoyed with it. It's going to result in you not drinking as much water because you don't want to stop and filter because it's not easy. And if it's not easy, you won't do it. And it's going to result in you getting dehydrated. Dehydration sucks, and it sucks especially at high elevations, where it can contribute to acute mountain sickness. It can contribute to headaches and a whole host of physiological things that at best are very unpleasant and can ruin your day, and at worst can probably really hurt you or kill you or put you in a bad situation. So just carry enough water. And we'll talk more about what I carry in a minute. But you want to have a pouch that is dedicated for a camelback style hydration reservoir built into the backpack for your own sake. Trust me. And then the last thing is you want a thoughtful layout in your backpack, right? So you don't want pockets slung everywhere. You don't want a backpack that just has one huge compartment and you got to pack everything down into that and then go digging for it every time you need something. Because again, you'll get annoyed with it and then you just won't do it, and you won't be geared properly. You won't have the right stuff. Just get one that has thoughtful pockets. Like, go to the store, physically look at the backpack, and think through where you would put stuff. Some backpacks are great. They're comfortable, they're lightweight, they look great, they're just exactly what you need. But the storage spaces and the pocket placement and just the thoughtfulness of the backpack sucks. It's just not very good, and it's not what you need, and it's not going to be convenient. For me, the Fish Pond Fire Hole has been the most thoughtfully organized bag I have for fishing. And that makes sense because it's made by a fishing company who obviously go out and use their stuff and therefore have designed it to work for that. So I start with that 26-liter backpack. You can use whatever backpack you want. I use the Fire Hole, but that's where the base is for what I'm carrying. And everything goes into the backpack. Okay. So going back to the water and hydration piece, you are going to need two things here. Number one, you're going to need a water filter of some kind. Doesn't have to be a big one, but you are going to need a water filter because chances are pretty good on those real long hikes you're going to run out of water. And then you're going to need a hydration reservoir that is at least 2 liters and maybe 3 liters. I carry 3 liters. Every liter of water weighs just a little bit more than 2 pounds. So at 3 liters, you're carrying 6 extra pounds, which is not insignificant. But I find that 3 liters is about right. I will drink that almost empty over the course of a morning if I'm doing a hard hike. If it's an easier hike, I will probably get through it by the end of the day. But it's enough that I have plenty of water. I'm not dehydrated. I may have to stop and filter one time. but I'm not having to stop every 30 minutes. I always have plenty of water. I'm usually incredibly well hydrated out there, probably better hydrated than I am at home, if I'm being honest. And that's because it's right there, right? You have the hose coming out, runs down your shoulder. You don't have to stop and take the pack off and get out your Nalgene and unscrew the lid. You can just sit there while you're fishing, grab the hose, stick it in your mouth, bite the spigot, have some water, put it back. No big deal. So, water filter of some kind. I use a Sawyer squeeze filter. I carry it with me. It's a little, I think it's a 32-ounce bag. You dip it in the water source, you fill it up, then you screw on the filter at the end of the bag, and you just squeeze that thing basically like a tube of toothpaste, or at least the way you're not supposed to squeeze a tube of toothpaste. You force the water out, it gets forced through this filter down into your reservoir in this case, and you have beautiful, cold, clear, tasty mountain water to drink. And man, there is nothing better than drinking fresh stream water while you're out there. Don't forget your water filter, because one of these days, if you do, you're going to run out of water. And when you run out of water, you're either going to have to choose between being dehydrated, which is dangerous, or drinking directly out of a water source in the mountains, which is also dangerous for a whole lot of reasons. You don't want to get Giardia. You really don't want to get some of the other stuff that's floating in there. You want to filter that water. You need to bring a filter. Doesn't weigh anything, a couple ounces. Put it in your bag. Keep it in your bag. You'll be happy that you did. One more word about water filters. The size of the filter, well, the filtration system, I don't know the technical term, but it matters. You need to have a filter that is at least 0.1 microns. Okay, so that means that anything bigger than 0.1 microns is not going to fit through the filter and therefore isn't going to wind up in your water. So that covers most bacteria, it covers most contaminants, it covers most stuff that you would be worried about drinking. That's all going to be screened out with a filter of the proper size. So if you get a filter that has wider openings than that, it is possible that you are going to be drinking bacteria or other scary stuff that could make you sick. You might have to spend a little bit extra for one of these nicer, tighter water filters. Just do it. You're going to be happy that you did. Buy a good one, carry it with you. You're going to be happy that you did. Okay? So that covers the hydration side of this. Now, you're also going to need a rain jacket every time. Okay, I don't care if the forecast says that it's supposed to be 95 degrees and sunny. I don't care that you haven't seen it rain for 1,000 years wherever you live. Maybe you live in the desert. It doesn't matter. Carry a rain jacket. Partially because when you are out, particularly at high elevations, I do a lot of fishing above 10,000 feet. I do a lot of fishing above timberline at like 12,000 feet or even higher. The weather is really unpredictable. It can go from blue skies and sunny to pouring, hammering rain in about 5 minutes flat. And then it can go back to blue skies 5 minutes after that. And then it can go back to pouring, hammering rain 5 minutes after that. You just don't know. The forecasts are helpful. Yes, you should look at a weather forecast before you go up into the mountains or into the wilderness. It's good to have an idea. Understand that they are wrong, or at least inaccurate, more often than they're not. You should assume, particularly in the summer months, that it is going to rain on you in the afternoon. If you have ever been out in a very hard, cold, driving rain, you know how quickly you will lose body heat that way. You'll get very cold, possibly hypothermic, even in July or August, particularly at higher elevations. And in addition to being miserable, you could be in serious danger. That's actually a potentially life-threatening situation. Carry a rain jacket. Carry a good rain jacket. Get one that has Gore-Tex in it that costs a little bit of money, but they're breathable. You don't want to get one that's not breathable, because then you're going to be, it's like wearing a trash bag. You're going to be getting cooked in that thing, particularly if you're hiking or doing any kind of exercise. Get a good breathable rain jacket that doesn't weigh much. You can get one that packs down so it's tiny if you're worried about space, but bring it with you. Just stick it in the bottom of your pack and call it your fishing jacket and have it with you every single time you go out. And by the way, those jackets have a extra bonus feature, which is that they're great in a cold wind. So even if it's not raining or not snowing and it's just windy, I get this a lot, like in the wintertime when I'm fishing and it's, 10 degrees and the water's cold and the wind hurts. That heavier material on the rain jacket not only stops rain, it also helps cut wind. So if you're getting cold and it's just windy and you don't like it, throw on your rain jacket. You'll be warmer. It'll help you. You'll be more comfortable. You'll be safer. Don't leave that at home. It's like 3 ounces. Carry the damn rain jacket. You're going to be glad that you did. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the other stuff we need just for hiking. I can run through some of these fairly quickly. Others will kind of pause on. But here's one that you probably thought about, but a lot of people don't do right. You need to bring food, especially if you're hiking. If you're going to be hiking a long distance, and like I said, on these day trips, I very often will do 4, 5, or 6 miles one way, which means that I am doing 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 miles on the way, or round trip in a single day. I wear a fitness tracker when I do that stuff just because I think it's interesting, and also because the one that I have, it's a Garmin Fenix 7. Helps me a lot with navigation and has a lot of really cool features. But one of the cool things it does is it tracks my calories burned. And on one of these really long, strenuous day hikes, particularly with serious elevation gain, 2,000, 3,000 feet, I am burning anywhere from 4,500 to 6,000 calories over the course of a day. I'm a big dude. I weigh 210. I'm not small, right? So I got to eat more than somebody who weighs, say, 150. But that's a lot of calories, and I think people don't have a concept for how much food that is that you need to have with you. You don't necessarily have to eat all your calories while you're out there. You can always come down and have a big meal. I have been known to get off the trail and go straight to In-N-Out Burger and hammer 3 cheeseburgers and 3 orders of fries, which is disgusting, but it's delicious. But you do need to have enough calories to get out at the end of the day. A lot of people make the mistake of underestimating that hike out. They think that it's going to be downhill, it'll be easy, no big deal. But you're not a regular hiker. You're going to hike up there. The hike may be long, it might be hard, there might be a lot of elevation gain. Then you're going to fish all day. And even though fishing isn't crazy, you're not doing CrossFit out there, it's still exercise. And that's particularly true if you're bushwhacking or wading or doing anything else. It's still exercise and it still takes a toll on you. And then you got to turn around and you got to walk all the way out. And yeah, it might be downhill, but hey, downhill still hurts. Your legs are getting burned. You're doing pistol dips the whole way down. In some cases, it might not be downhill. So if you hike into a canyon, one of my favorite canyons here in Colorado, you hike in and it's pretty mellow. There's a couple sections of up, but for the most part, you're just descending down into this canyon, and that's perfectly fine. You fish all day for 6, 7, 8, 9 hours, and then you hike out. Well, guess what? You're in a canyon. You went down to get in there, and everything that goes down must come up. It sounds simple, but I cannot tell you how many times I have seen people in various canyons who seem to have forgotten that they're going to have to climb out of there at the end of the day. So you're going to have all that fatigue, and then you got to mount this serious climb up the hill. You can't do that without food. I used to fish without food. I used to skip lunch because I'm like, man, I'm out here to fish and I don't want to waste any time with that. And I had a few days where I thought I was going to pass out coming back off of one of these hikes. I mean, it was just miserable, unsafe. And when you're tired and you're hungry, you start making mistakes. You place your foot wrong, you roll your ankle, you make bad choices, you walk into tree limbs, you can get hurt. It's not good, on top of just feeling crappy. So now I carry enough food to get out. I aim to carry between 1,000 and 2,000 calories per person. So for me, it's 1,000 to 2,000 calories. If I have somebody else with me for whatever reason, I'm going to carry double that just to make sure that you've got it. And often I'll carry a lot more than that. A big bag of food weighs maybe 2 pounds, but having it with you so that if you're starving or if you just need a snack or if you just need some gas to get out at the end of the day, bring food with you. It can be simple. I usually bring trail mix. I bring little bags of beef jerky. One trick that I love is to carry a summer sausage with you. It doesn't have to be refrigerated, so you can just carry it warm in the package. Bring it out there, cut it open, slice that sucker up, and have really good fresh sausage and good meat while you're out there that doesn't require cooking. I have occasionally carried cooking gear with me. I've come to believe over the course of my time doing this that carrying that for day trips is not worth it. Obviously, you have it for backpacking, but not really needed for day trips. So, trail mix, energy bars, some candy if you want to be bad. Bring some Sour Patch Kids and knock yourself out. Bring protein. So, like I said, beef jerky, summer sausage, whatever. Then bring something crunchy and salty to kind of help with those electrolyte levels and keep your energy up. It could be potato chips. It could be Parm crisps. I recently discovered Parm crisps, which are like pieces of Parmesan cheese that have been baked, I suppose. It's like that juicy, delicious cheese that gets stuck on the side of the pizza pan when you're making pizza, and they are amazing. They're so good. And so bring that with you. It'll make you feel better during the day. It'll help you fish better. It will keep your mood more stable. And ultimately, it'll help you get out at the end of the day. 1,000 to 2,000 calories worth of food. Think about it as calories. Your body in these situations is a machine. You're not out there to eat gourmet. You're not out there to have a luxury experience. You're out there to be in the backcountry and be in the wilderness. Treat your body like a car and bring enough fuel to get the car back home at the end of the day. That's probably 1,000 to 2,000 calories a day. Think about it. Bring it with you. Now, this one's kind of gross, but because you are eating out there, there is a possibility that you're going to have to do something else that often occurs after eating, and that would be pooping. You might have to poop while you're out there. I don't know what your schedule is. Everybody has a different schedule. Nobody likes to talk about it. It's gross and awkward. But everybody has a schedule, and someday you're going to have to poop out there, and there may not be a bathroom. There might be a bathroom at the trailhead. You might be able to stop at a store on the way up. I've got a few of my favorite places that I can stop at and hit on my way up early in the morning if the urge strikes me after a cup of coffee. But you don't get to pick that, you know? And if you made the mistake of eating spicy food the day before you hike, or really heavy, greasy food the day before you hike, by the way, I've been there and I've done that. Don't do that. You're going to have a bad time. But if you do, it can hit you, and it can hit you pretty hard. And you really got to have an answer for that. Okay? You don't want to be trying to hold it. That can go bad in a whole bunch of different ways. You don't want to have to be wiping yourself with leaves. That's how people, wind up rubbing poison ivy all over their whats and having a terrible time. You need to be a civilized human being about it. And because you are not an asshole, and you're not going to leave your poopy toilet paper somewhere where somebody else could step on it or it contaminates the landscape, you're going to bring, yes, toilet paper. Bring a whole roll of toilet paper. There's no reason to bring those little camp things. I know people will be mad at me, but in case you have a messy episode, you want extra. Doesn't weigh that much. Doesn't take up that much room. You can smash it in your pack. It's not going to break. Bring a whole roll of toilet paper and bring a poop trowel for camping. They're not very heavy. They weigh probably less than an ounce. You dig a hole, you bend over, you poop in the hole, you wipe yourself, you put the toilet paper in the hole, and then you cover it up. The trowel is there not to move the poop. Don't make that mistake. Some people make that mistake and then they go home with a poopy trowel. Don't be that guy. The trowel is there to dig the hole and then to cover it up. And the covering it up part is the most important part, because that allows it to degrade over time in the ground. It makes it so that we don't have piles of human waste and poopy toilet paper laying all over the wilderness, which sucks and is gross. And it honestly just helps with the smell. Like, if somebody comes along the trail behind you, they probably don't want to be trying to guess what flavor of Chipotle you had last night. Just cover your shit up, guys. And to do that, you need to bring a poop trowel. Don't use your hands. Don't use a rock. Just bring a damn trowel. They're like $5 on Amazon. Okay, so go get one. Toilet paper, poop trowel. Mandatory. You may only have to poop 1 out of every 20 times you're out there. But when you have to, you're going to be real glad you have this stuff. Don't leave it at home. Okay. Also on the food subject, you need to bring extra bags for trash. Okay. You're going to make trash. Everything that you eat in the woods, especially on a day trip, is going to come in a package, which means you're going to generate trash. You don't want to leave trash out there. Remember guiding principle 2 from last episode. Leave no trace. Please don't leave your trash in the woods, right? And don't stuff it in your pockets where it can fall out later when you're digging for whatever, a tippet spool or your nippers or whatever you happen to stuff in there. Bring a separate bag. It can be a gallon Ziploc bag. It can be a King Soopers bag or a Kroger bag. It doesn't really matter, but bring someplace where you can collect and concentrate your trash. You need to keep your food in a Ziploc bag separately. You don't want to be putting trash back into your Ziploc bag with food you haven't eaten. That's particularly true if you're eating something that's kind of meaty, like a summer sausage, for instance. You probably don't want to put a wet, slimy summer sausage package back into the bag with the rest of your uneaten food, because it's gross and it smells bad. You need to have a dedicated trash bag that you keep in your pack, and over the course of the day, you put your trash in there. You put whatever trash you happen to find out there, tippet, line, glass bottles, cans, whatever. You just stuff it in the bag, and then stuff the bag in your pack, and then you don't leave anything out there, and you're a better person. So don't forget your trash bag. Now let's talk about electronics. I know there are people out there who believe that you should leave your electronics at home. I just read a story last week about a woman who was trapped here in Colorado for 4 days out in the woods because she went on a religious experience and was told, don't bring your cell phone, and also fast, don't eat anything, because you'll have a deeper connection to whatever spiritual thing she was trying to be connected with. Didn't go well. She got lost. They found her, thank God, but she very easily could have died. And part of that is because she didn't have a set of electronics with her to help. Here's thing one that I'm going to throw out there about your cell phone. And yes, you should bring your cell phone 100% of the time. Don't leave your phone at home. Don't leave your phone in the truck. Don't be dumb. Bring your cell phone with you because you're going to need it for a few things that we'll talk about here in a minute. But bring that with you. I know you're not going to have reception. Okay, a lot of these places, if you're doing serious backcountry stuff, you're going to be in places that don't have reception or that have very sporadic reception, and the temptation is there to not bring your phone. You got to bring your phone, partially because you want to take pictures of all those sweet fish that you're going to be catching and the cool nature landscapes that you're going to be seeing, but partially because the phone is the number one lifeline that you have, especially when you pair it with some of these other items. Here's the thing: phones have batteries, and batteries can run out and will run out depending on what kind of phone you have. You might get a full day on a charge, you might get half a day, you might get 2 days. It depends on how old your phone is, how much you use it, a whole bunch of other stuff. But you might run out of batteries. And if something happened, and let's say you, God forbid, broke your leg, or you slipped and you hit your head and were unconscious for a while, or just whatever, something bad happened, you're going to want to have a phone battery pack with you. And by that, I mean one of those small battery packs that allow you to recharge electronics while you're out in the field. I carry a 10,000 milliamp or milliamp hour. I can't remember the exact scientific designation for it, but a 10,000 unit battery pack, which is about enough to charge my phone 4 full times. You can check the size of your battery in your phone, compare that to the size of your backup battery. But I get about 4 full charges on my phone out of that thing, which means that it's got enough juice not only to charge my phone one time, but to charge it 3 more times after that if I had to, or if I needed to, I could use it to charge my watch. If I needed additional navigation, I could charge my personal locator beacon, which we'll talk more about here in a minute. Or I could just charge my headphones. Like if I happen to be hiking real fast and I'm listening to music, we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. I could use this thing to just charge those things up as a convenience factor. But it's just not a big deal to carry. Again, they weigh a couple ounces, no big deal. You can get real small ones. They're very effective. They're pretty efficient at charging, and it's just worth having that thing with you. Don't leave it behind. Okay, don't forget it. And one more thing with that, don't forget the cables. Okay, remember when I told you early on that I was stupid and I often made mistakes? One of the mistakes that I made real early on was that I stuck a battery pack into my bag and I thought I was good. I said, oh, I've got a battery pack. I've got my phone. There's no big deal here. And then I realized when I got out there that I actually didn't bring the cables that I needed to charge. I didn't bring the USB-C cable. You might have a USB-C, you might have a micro USB, you might have whatever. It doesn't matter. Whatever kind of cable you need for your phone. If you forget the cable, you can't charge your phone. And I know that sounds simple, but I've been this guy. I've made this mistake. Bring the cable for your phone, bring the cable for your headphones, bring the cable for whatever, your watch, or anything else that you think you might need to charge while you're out there. Buy an extra cable. You can buy like some cheap Chinese knockoff cables off of Amazon for $5. They'll be here tomorrow, whatever. Buy those things and put them in your backpack because that extra battery pack not going to help you if you don't have the cable. So don't forget that part. Now, as far as your phone goes and the stuff that you want to have on your phone, I use my phone very frequently for navigation. Okay. And particularly, sometimes it's just convenient navigation, like where am I on the trail? Where's the next turnoff? Where do I need to be? How far do I have left to go? There's a fair amount of stuff that's just kind of convenience. I want to know stuff. And then there's other stuff that is serious navigation. So, am I on the route that I planned out on the same app to get to this lake at 12,000 feet that's 3 miles off trail? Or maybe I'm off trail in a stream and I'm trying to figure out what the right way to go is. How steep is that rock face? What does the slope look like? Where do I need to be? How do I get back? I use it for all of that stuff. And I also use it for tracking myself. So I'll hit a little button that will track me, where I am on the map. The result is I know where I am pretty much at all times when I'm out there. It's very hard for me to get lost, even when I'm miles out in the wilderness and way, way off trail doing something. I know where I am. I know where I need to go if anything happens, and I'm pretty well set. The app that I use for that, there are a lot of those out there. Again, I'm not being paid for this. I'm just telling you the stuff that has worked best for me after trying several options. Is an app called OnX Backcountry. It's a great app. It has topographical maps on it. It has this really cool 3D topographical map where you can it'll raise the mountains and the ridges and sink the basins so that you can see sort of real time what the terrain is going to look like. It's got pretty good satellite imagery so you can see where the boulder fields are, kind of where the snow fields might be, where the stream crossings are going to be, heavy vegetation that you might have to go around or go through. It's an incredibly helpful app, and it also allows you to build routes before you go. So you could build a route to, a lake that's just up a well-populated, well-maintained trail just for the sake of having it there so you know where you're going. Or you can do what I often do, which is actually sit down, study those topographic maps, really think about the landscape, and make your own routes up to some of these off-trail spaces that don't have established trails or any trails up to them. That app allows you to make a route and to think about where you need to go to get all the way up to the top of those things to get where you're going. And it can track you. So you turn on a little button on there and it tracks you while you walk. It shows you a real handy dotted line to show you the actual path that you took relative to the path that you plotted out. It does that on the way up. It does it on the way back. So you can kind of follow your footsteps back the same way you came without having to stress too much about, big variations or turning yourself around or getting lost. It's extremely helpful to have on it. And that all utilizes your phone, which is why you need to have your phone with you. I also carry a paper map in most instances. I do carry a compass in most instances. It is not impossible that you would lose your phone, at which point you would be in big trouble. So you should carry a paper map as well. You should know how to read the paper map, and you should know how to use a compass. I think I mentioned in one of the episodes earlier that I heard a story about two guys that went hiking in the desert. They went off trail. They got confused. They had a map and a compass, but they didn't know how to use them. Got lost. Spent several days out there in the searing heat with not enough water. Going back to our first thing, carry enough water to get through it. And ultimately, one of them died pretty horrifically. And when they found them, when the park rangers found them, they realized that they were only about 15 minutes away from the parking lot. They just happened to be over a ridge. They had no idea how to use their map or their compass. They had no backup navigation, and so they were bad, and they had a bad time, and one of them died. So don't do that. Don't do that. Carry a paper map. But I will say I use my phone primarily for navigation. It is my primary navigation device. I always have backups. Yeah, you could lose it. Don't lose your phone. Have a dedicated pocket in your rain jacket or your pants, preferably one that zips, or your bag or whatever. Put your phone somewhere safe. Put it in the same place every single time. Don't put it in a different pocket this time and a different pocket next time, in your backpack the third time. Put it in the same place every single time, and don't lose it. Religiously hang on to that thing and don't let it out of your sight. Don't drop it in the water. Don't drop it in the bushes. Don't carry it with you when you're walking through a boulder field that has a bunch of, crevices and cracks that it could fall down into. Take care of your phone. It's your lifeline out there. Okay. So that's OnX Backcountry and how I navigate. The other thing that I use my phone for is my personal locator beacon. So again, not being paid, but the Garmin InReach Mini 2 is something that I carry when I am out whacking around in the middle of nowhere. It's a satellite-based device, which means that even if you don't have cell reception, which you likely won't in a lot of these places, it allows you to be connected via satellite with the network. You can send texts to your significant other. You can send text to whoever and say, hey, I'm okay. I just made it to the lake. I'm passing the first checkpoint. I'll be home for dinner at 7. Whatever. So there's a convenience factor to having that with you, just to be able to be in communication with folks. You don't have to give your number. It doesn't work through your cell phone number really to anybody else. So you won't have your boss asking you if you filed your TPS reports or whatever. But you can be in touch with the people that you want to be in touch with while you're out there, which is helpful for them so they're not afraid and worried. Also helpful for you because it's convenient to be able to tell folks where you are and when you're going to be back and everything else. Um, but again, it relies on your phone. So the InReach Mini is this little tiny device, easily fit in a pocket. I typically turn mine on, I stick it in my bag, and then you use your phone with an app called Garmin Explore. It syncs with that device, and you can use it to send messages via your phone. You can look at the maps on your phone. It shows you where you are. I will tell you truthfully, I don't think that Garmin's Explore app does an amazing job of positioning, and the way that it tracks your route is not granular enough and not detailed enough to be super helpful for backtracking, even though it does have a feature to let you follow your way back. I prefer OnX for that. I think there are better tools for that. But it does tell you roughly where you are. It has a different set of mapping. It has the messaging features, like I said. It allows for tracking, so you can give everybody a link. And if your wife or your partner or your friend or whatever wants to track on where you are when you're out there, they can just pull up a link that you send them. They hit the refresh button, and bada bing, bada boom, right on their computer screens or on their phone, they can see precisely where you are at that moment. There are different plans available for it. Some of them allow for 10-minute tracking. Some of them allow for 5-minute or 1-minute tracking. So the intervals at which the device sends your location on the trail. But it lets them know where you are, which is good, partially just for peace of mind, and partially because if something happened to you and you were incapacitated, it tells rescuers where they need to go to get you. And that's the last feature that the Garmin carries. This is really the most important one. Pretty much every season I read, God, I don't know, probably half a dozen stories of people whose lives have been saved with this thing, climbing on a mountain or getting off trail or getting attacked, whatever. There is an SOS button. It's behind a little rubber flap. You have to lift the flap, kind of like you got to flick up the arming lid on like a missile launch button in the movies. And then you push the button, and it sends out an SOS to first Garmin, then to whatever the local law enforcement organization is, then eventually to search and rescue if that's necessary. They can communicate with you via the device. It obviously broadcasts your location so that they know where you are located and where they need to go to get to you. And it allows them to not have to spend a bunch of time and resources trying to find you. You can tell them what your medical condition is. I imagine in some scenarios they can provide instructions to you about where you need to go or what you need to do. But it's a very helpful feature that can save your life and has saved a lot of people's lives over the course of the last several years when I've seen it, but I'm sure it was going on before that. There are other devices out there that do the same thing. I can't speak for those. I just have the Garmin. I've never had to push the SOS button. I've really never even been close to having to push the SOS button. But one day I might have to. And the fact that nothing bad's happened yet doesn't mean that it can't happen in the future. Like we always say, I would not go to these remote places with no cell phone reception and no connection to the outside world without that device or without some type of personal locator device that included an SOS function. They're expensive. I think this thing costs $300 or maybe it was $400. They're not cheap like most outdoor gear, but it might save your life. And so it's up to you to decide what you want to do. For me, $300 to $400 for a device that might save my life is easy money. It's less than I pay for insurance every year, probably every couple of months. Easy, no-brainer thing that you absolutely should have with you anytime you are in the backcountry, no matter what. And don't forget to turn it on. I've done that before. Sometimes you forget to turn it on. If you don't turn it on, it can't work. So make it part of your routine to sit there and turn the thing on and bring it with you wherever you carry it. Strap it to your backpack, put it in the pocket. Doesn't matter. You don't have to hold it in your hand. You probably don't want to because you don't want to leave it somewhere. But bring it with you somewhere and make sure that you have that thing with you. All right. So on the same topic of electronics, one other thing that you're going to want to bring is headlamp and batteries. You're not supposed to be out there at night. Now, you might start hiking in the dark if you're going way up a mountain. Or you might conceivably get back after dark if you have been out there for a long time. Preferably not. I don't like hiking in the dark. I think it elevates risk in a way that isn't necessary in most situations. But it could happen, or you could get hurt and have to spend some time out there. Every now and then you hear about someone that has to spend a night on the mountain because the weather's too bad and search and rescue can't get to them or whatever. You should have a light with you all the time, and it needs to be a good LED headlamp that can comfortably fit on your head. I know that sounds stupid, but there are a lot of headlamps that don't comfortably fit on your head, and then people wind up walking around, holding them in the palm of their hand like they're Iron Man and shining them around that way. That's not a good idea. You need your hands free for a lot of hiking, especially in the dark. The thing needs to go on your head and be comfortable. It needs to have bright enough light to be functional. Some lights just don't. They're not bright enough to be very helpful, particularly not in that really deep darkness that you get in backcountry woods at night. And it needs to have a couple of settings. You want the regular setting, which obviously is to help you see. You'd really like to have a strobe setting where it flashes in case you need to get somebody's attention. Let's say there were rescuers coming up to you or whatever. There are a couple of reasons you might want to signal somebody out there. You want it to have that strobe feature with a nice bright white light. And then you really would like it to have red lights. And the reason for that, a lot of people don't know this, but red light does not wreck your natural night vision the way that bright light does. Bright white light, I should say. Red light is often used by military folks to read maps at night. It's used by a lot of campers and hikers to read stuff at night because it gives you enough light to see, but it does not mess up your visual purple and the physiological processes in your eyes that allow you to be able to see well in the dark after they adjust. It can take a really long time for your eyes to adjust to the dark. So if you've taken the time to do that and then you flip on a really bright, blazing hot white LED headlamp, you're probably not going to be able to see in the dark anymore. So having those red lights is really helpful for being out there if you need to read a map, if you need to, I don't know, look down and figure out how to unzip your pants so you can go to the bathroom or find something in your pack or whatever. Red light is good, and you want to have that with you whenever you're out there on your headlamp, whenever possible. Check your headlamp, make sure it works before you go out. This is true of all gear. Never go out there with gear that you haven't tested. Check it before you go, not when you get there, not in the parking lot, but before you leave the house. And then bring extra batteries. So some headlamps are rechargeable, in which case you can use that battery pack that I mentioned earlier to recharge it if and only if you remember the correct cord. Don't forget the cord. Or you can bring actual physical batteries. So most of my headlamps use AAA batteries. Some of them have one, some of them have three, some of them have two. Actually, I guess I don't have any that have less than two, so two or three. And I carry enough for at least two changes. So if I'm carrying a headlamp that has two AAA batteries in them, I'm going to carry 4 extra batteries with me. If I have one that takes 3, I'm going to carry 6 extra AAA batteries with me just to make sure that I'm never going to run out of batteries if something happens and I get stuck out there in the dark. Um, you know, uh, they weigh a little bit. Batteries aren't the lightest thing in the world, but these are little batteries. They're really not that heavy, and they are something that you really should have with you when you're out there, especially if you think you might need them for, before or after dark hiking. And even if you don't think you're going to need them, just carry them. It's one of those things that you'll be glad that you have. Don't leave those at home, and definitely don't leave your headlamp at home. You want to bring a fire starter. It doesn't have to be heavy. I know some places you're not allowed to have a fire. You're not out there to camp. You're not making s'mores. I get it. It's a day trip. But you don't know. You could fall into an icy river, especially in the early season or the late season, and get really cold and be in danger of hypothermia or frostbite and need to build a fire to dry out. You could get stuck out there for a night, like we keep saying, at which point you might need a fire. You might have to, whatever. There's a million different, you might need to dry your clothes off. There's a million reasons that you could need a fire. You're probably not going to need a fire, but you should carry a fire starter anyway. I carry a ferro rod. It is a little metal rod with a scraper on it. When you scrape the scraper across the rod, it creates sparks. Those sparks can be used to start a fire. I haven't weighed it. I would guess that it weighs less than half a pound, probably less than a quarter of a pound. I forget that I have it 99% of the time. I've never needed to use it. But if I ever did, I would be glad that it's in my pack, and I make sure that I always carry that with me. Don't forget your fire starter. And on the same note, don't forget your emergency blanket. So, same scenario, you fall in, you get real cold, you get caught in a blizzard or a rainstorm, and you forgot your rain jacket or whatever. you can get pretty cold. And those emergency blankets they're like little Mylar blankets. They don't weigh anything. They're extremely cheap. Typically, they have sort of heat insulating properties, and they also have a reflective side to help folks find you if they were looking for you from the air or wherever else. And despite how thin they are, they're really remarkably efficient at helping you retain body heat. That's why you see, videos on the news of people that are pulled from these frigid waters or frigid rivers who are wrapped in these emergency blankets with the paramedics and with the rescue workers while they're waiting to be taken to the hospital. They work pretty well. They fold down to tiny, tiny sizes. I mean, like a couple inches by an inch. They weigh absolutely nothing. They're cheap as dirt, and they might save your life. Bring those with you. Don't leave them at home. I carry at least one. Sometimes I carry two, but it's worth having those in your backpack all the time. You're also going to want some paracord. Paracord, for those who don't know, is a type of really thick cord that you can carry with you. It usually comes in a big bundle. You don't have to carry a huge 5-pound bundle of paracord. Just like, a couple 100 feet of it is probably plenty for you, or 100 feet of it even is plenty for you. Maybe even less than that, depending on what you're doing. But there are a lot of times where you might need cord. You could have a strap break on your backpack. You could need to put up a shelter, in which case you could build a little A-frame with paracord and one of those emergency blankets that I just talked about. You might need to patch up something else. There are a million there. You might want to tie something to a tree so a bear doesn't take it. I mean, there's a million things that you can do with paracord. You're going to be glad that you have it with you. I've used it to hold shoes together before when a sole is coming off or whatever. You could use it as a tourniquet in a really bad situation. We'll talk more about medical stuff here in a minute. But it's very, very useful stuff, and it's something that you absolutely want to have with you when you're out there, even if it's just a little bit of it. So stick it in your pack, keep it with you. Don't leave it behind. As far as just comfort stuff goes, actually, let me back up real quickly. There is one more safety and navigation thing that you are going to want to have with you when you are out there, and that is trail tape. So you need trail tape. If you don't know what trail tape is, it's this tape-like material. It's kind of not really tape because it's not sticky, but it comes in rolls like tape. It's usually brightly colored, and you take it with you. You peel off a section, 6 inches or whatever, and you use that to mark a trail. So you might tie it into a tree branch, you might tie it onto a log, you could somehow stick it to a rock, but it's designed to help you mark a trail. In some cases, this can be useful for you just if you're on a established trail that's a mess, there are down trees or it's been washed out or whatever. It's a helpful way to mark the trail for yourself and for others. If you're off trail, it is a helpful way for you to mark where you came from, so that you can find your way back. And you're not just wandering around out there forever. It's a way to mark certain landmarks or things of interest to you. So, for instance, the tree where you dropped your backpack earlier, or a place where you had lunch, or a campsite that you thought looked promising, or whatever. It is just a way to keep track of that stuff. The most common use for it, and the way that I use it, is to keep track of backcountry routes when I'm off trail. In addition to my app that tells me where I'm coming and going, I tie trail tape so I have a visual marker of where I need to be, entrances and exits, as well as everything else that I might care about on my way back down. Keep in mind, and we'll do a whole podcast on navigation and overland work and pathfinding one of these days. The way down often looks really different than the way up. Even if you follow your path exactly, you're going to have moments on the way down where you're like, man, I don't remember this. This looks different. Have I been here before? Am I on the right route? And that stuff can start to mess with your head because stuff just looks different. You're coming at it from the opposite direction. You're probably coming at it from uphill or downhill when you came at it from the opposite way before. It just looks different, and it can stress you out. It can lead you to making bad decisions. But if you see that little piece of bright orange tape tied to a pine tree, oh, well, this is the way I came, and this is the way I need to go back. Carry trail tape. I have found that one standard size roll will cover about a mile of off-trail work, assuming you're doing it right. And doing it right with trail tape, by the way, means that you are putting it up frequently enough that you can see your next checkpoint from the previous checkpoint. If you're only tying trail tape up every 100 yards and one of them is not visible from the other, it's almost useless to you because you can wander off trail. You're going to get stuck looking for the thing. You don't know where to go. if you tie them up so that when you reach one, you can look up and say, oh, there's the next one. You just go there, and the next one after that, you're going to be safer. You're going to have that psychological boost of, okay, I'm on the right trail, I'm going the right way, and it's going to be faster for you. You can just follow your trail back and be happier for that. So bring trail tape with you. One will do about a mile. I like to carry 2 rolls. I probably don't need 2 rolls, but I have run out of trail tape before on serious off-trail stuff. It's worth having 2 in my opinion, but you. Do make sure that you have at least 1 roll of trail tape so you can help yourself. One final note on this. There are people out there who will come at me and say, well, you said leave no trace, and that sounds like littering to me. That's true enough. I will often take my trail tape down with me on the way back. I'll just take it off the branches and carry it with me. But if I'm going to return to an area, I do sometimes leave the trail tape up. I just do. I probably shouldn't, I guess, in some of these areas. But I find that other people's trail tape in a lot of these areas is helpful to me. It may be helpful to someone else. It might save somebody else's life if they were to follow this route that I have laid out. And I'm probably going to come back, right? If I'm going to be there in 2 weeks, I might leave the trail tape up just to save myself time on the way up or down. Maybe I take it down later, whatever. You can make your own decisions about that, but bring it with you. It can save your life, and it might make your life or make your day a whole lot better. So bring trail tape. Okay. One last item on the safety piece, and this is probably the most important one. Bring a med kit. Not a first aid box. Okay, we're not talking about like one of those things that you buy at Walmart that has a couple Band-Aids and some antibiotic cream and a ketchup packet. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a actual medical kit for trauma, right? So you could fall and break your leg, and I'm sorry to be gross about this, but it could be a compound fracture with a bone sticking out of your skin and you're bleeding. You could, and I know this doesn't happen often, but it can happen. You could be attacked by an animal of some kind. You could cut your leg on something and open up a big, nasty, bleeding wound. You could burn yourself in a whole bunch of different ways. You could get bitten by something. There's just a lot that can happen to you out there. And that is you got to have a med kit no matter what. This is a non-negotiable item. So some of the others you can fudge or think about or whatever. You got to carry a med kit. It needs to have, at a minimum, anticoagulant stuff. So if you were cut and bleeding badly, something that would go in there, or sorry, anti-bleeding stuff that would be able to help a wound stop bleeding. It needs to include a high-quality tourniquet in case you were to get a really bad cut or something, some other injury on your leg or your arm, to cut off the blood flow and hopefully save your life and maybe save your limb. A tourniquet is arguably the most important part of it. It should include sterile bandages. It should include ways to clean a wound. It should include antibiotic ointment. It should include various styles and sizes of gauze and of Band-Aids and of other stuff that you might need. And then a whole host of other things. The one that I carry, I can't remember the name of the company that makes it. I'll try to look it up and maybe add it to the show notes. But it's real small. It's maybe 6 inches by 4 inches. It's a little pocket square canvas bag. It hangs on the outside of my bag all the time. I've only needed to go into it like twice. But it's there if I need it. It's got scissors. It's got forceps. It's got all the stuff I could need. It has a tourniquet attached to it. I don't think I'll ever need it. I hope I'll never need it, but it's there if I do, either for myself or for somebody else, right? So one of our guiding principles was expect the unexpected. And be prepared for the unexpected. You can come across somebody who's hurt out there, or your friend could get hurt if you're going with somebody else, or whatever. You could just come across a whole bunch of different scenarios. In all of them, you will be glad to have a medical kit with you. Just carry it with you. It could save your life. Crazy stuff happens. I heard a story at one point about a guy, I think it was in Colorado, fishing in a remote river, doing his thing, having a great time, glorious. And then he feels this huge punch in his shoulder. Doesn't know what happened. It's just a big impact. He looks down. He's been shot. There was a hunter hundreds of yards away who missed a shot. Bullet flew through the trees. It was not malicious. He wasn't shooting at the guy. He had no idea anybody was over there. Happened to hit this guy. Got shot in the shoulder in the middle of nowhere. Not likely to happen to you, but if that were to happen and you didn't have at least some type of basic stuff, you're going to have a bad time. Carry that stuff with you, know how to use it. We will have somebody on to talk specifically about wilderness medicine and how you treat injuries and trauma in the wilderness, but you need to know how to use it. You need to have it with you all the time, 100% of the time, no negotiation. I don't care how much it weighs. Carry the damn thing with you, and one day you're going to be glad that you did. All right. So I think that pretty much covers the vast majority of the regular hiking stuff. There are a couple other items you should always have in there. You want bug spray, especially in the summer. So carry some bug spray. You can choose what kind you want, whether it has DEET in it or it's a natural stuff or whatever. Carry that with you. Carry sunscreen. You need to wear sunscreen, right? Skin cancer is a thing and sunburns suck. Don't forget to carry that. Carry hand sanitizer, especially if you think you might have to poop and then eat later. Carry some hand sanitizer with you. A little bottle's fine. Just keep those hands clean. Clean out your cuts if you get one. Whatever. Carry that stuff with you. That's real basic stuff. But the really important stuff that you got to have with you if you're going to go backcountry fly fishing is fly fishing equipment. So I want to talk about that real quickly. And we're not going to get into the very specifics of what type of rods and everything else. We can talk about that in another episode. But you got to carry fishing stuff with you, and you need to be thoughtful about that because you have to haul all that stuff up there. This is the dividing line between people who are hiking because they like to hike, in which case they can be sort of ultralight. They can go as light as they can. They don't have to carry all this stuff. They can get their pack weights way down. And people who are doing it to fly fish, which necessitates that you carry equipment that weighs quite a bit, right? My fly fishing equipment probably weighs between 5 and 10 pounds, I would say, on most trips, which is quite a bit. That's about half the weight of my pack. Like I said, the pack is 20 to 22 pounds most trips. This stuff accounts for about half of it. So make your peace now. If you're going to fly fish in the backcountry, you're going to have to carry extra weight. That's just part of the game. It sucks. I wish we couldn't do it. If somebody ever invents a teleportation device or some type of way to carry your fly fishing equipment that weighs 1 ounce, I'll be the first guy to buy it. I'll tell you about it here. But for now, you got to carry your stuff, and that's just part of the game. So here is what I carry for fishing equipment. I carry 2 fly rods. Yes, 2 at all times. I carry them in their tubes. I do not hike with fly rods that are put together or strung up. So all you guys out there with your rod vaults where those rods are already ready to go, I really hope you're not hiking like that, because hiking with a rigged fly rod is an invitation to break your rod, to leave it somewhere when you have to go to the bathroom, to get some kind of horrific tangle and get your leader and your line stuck on bushes while you're walking, on top of just being annoying to have to carry something that far. Hike with your rods broken down, for real. It takes like 30 seconds to break down a fly rod. If you're any good at it, it only takes a minute or 2 to set it up when you get there. You're going to be fine. Do it the right way, not the fast way, particularly when it comes to hiking. So I carry 2 fly rods with me at all times. And the reason for that is that sometimes I break one. And this has happened often enough to me that it's become a thing. I might break a rod. It might be because I do something stupid and I put it down and I step on it, or I might drop it, or I might smack it on a rock, or I might catch Godzilla. I don't know. But I might break a rod, and I have broken a rod. And if you have hiked 5 or 6 miles into this glorious backcountry spot and you break your only fly rod, you, number one, aren't going to have a good day because you're not going to be fishing. And number 2, you are going to kick yourself so hard that it's just going to hurt and it's going to stay with you. It sucks. I've been this guy before. You want to have a backup fly rod with you. Carry 2. I'm not going to talk about what kind of rods. We'll do a podcast about that at some point in the future. I typically carry a heavy rod for alpine lake fishing, usually a 6 weight. And then I'll carry a lighter rod or lighter rods for stream fishing, usually a 3 weight or a 4 weight, maybe a 5 weight, depending on what I'm doing. But I always have them with me. They are in their own rod tubes. We'll talk about this in a later episode, but there is actually, there are some tips about how you can carry fly rods without having to carry multiple tubes and everything else. But they're in their tubes. They're in my side pocket, going back to what I said earlier, where, we might use those water bottle pockets for something else. Well, I use mine for my fly rod tubes. I use a bungee cord to strap them to the backpack. I wrap it around the tubes a few times and then strap it to one of the D-loops or to the kind of top handle of the backpack just to make sure I don't lose them in the trees. You need to make sure they're secured and they're not flopping around on your back. And then I hike with those things sticking up off of my back because I need them when I'm up there. I don't want them in my hands. And I like to make sure I have backups. On the same note, you need to carry 2 reels. And I know that sounds crazy, but listen, number one, you're already carrying 2 fly rods. They're probably different line weights, which means that you're going to have to carry 2 reels anyway. I suppose there is some situation where you could carry 1 reel with an extra spool with a different line weight on it, I guess. If you're that guy, I think that's kind of weird, but you do what you got to do. Either way, you want to carry 2 reels. You can have situations where a reel can lock up on you, it gets a pebble stuck in it, it freezes on you. I have been messing around with the reel trying to clear a tangle and dropped the little screw mechanism that holds the outside plate of the reel onto it, which makes the reel useless. You could lose a reel, it could fall out of your backpack. I actually had a pack of marmots try to steal a reel out of my backpack one time, so you could get robbed by marmots at some high alpine lake. Or any one of a number of other things. You could get up there and realize you packed the wrong reel. I've done that a few times before. Always check to make sure you're packing them, particularly if you have a lot of reels like I do. Make sure that they are the right one. But really, no matter what, you need 2 of them. They just weigh a couple ounces, especially if you have a decent reel. It's worth having 2, partially so you can have 2 setups. Maybe you want sinking line and floating line, whatever. But you need to have 2 reels in case something goes wrong with one or you lose it or whatever else. 2 rods, 2 reels, all the time. That is my baseline. And then I carry my fishing bag, which is a chest pack. I think it is a fish pond. I think it's called the Canyon. I'll have to go back and look. I don't know. Fish pond's not paying me for this, so I'm not going to be highly specific. But it's one of the real small ones, Canyon Creek maybe. It's a little chest pack. It's probably, I don't know, 10 inches tall and like 4 inches deep. It's not very big, but it's enough for me to carry for a day trip. It weighs about 2 pounds if I'm really religious about what I put in it, which is a considerable amount of weight, but it is light enough that I can carry it with me. The beauty of fish pond stuff is that chest pack actually clips into these special attachments on the front of the backpack, so I can just use it as a chest pack with the backpack while the backpack is on, and that's awesome. It's very convenient. I can also clip it to the back of the backpack, so if I don't want to wear that thing on my front and I prefer to just hike down with my chest clear so I'm not hot or whatever, it clips onto the back of the backpack. That's easy. Sometimes I'll stick it in the backpack. It just depends on what I have going on. But that is what I carry with me. I have 3 fly boxes in there, all with flies that I tied myself, of course. You can carry store-bought flies. There's nothing wrong with that. But I've got my sacred fly boxes there. I have one for dry flies. I have one for nymphs. And I have one for streamers and weird stuff. It's all there. I have a couple bottles of dry fly shake because we're fishing dry flies a lot in these backcountry areas and on these lakes. And there's nothing worse than not having dry fly shake, so your fly is sinking all day. That's terrible. I carry some gink, some sort of petroleum-based floatant for the dry flies so I can dress them before I use them. I carry some split shot just in case one of the fish makes me nymph, God forbid. I carry some indicators in case I need to do any kind of nymphing work up there. And then I carry my nippers and my forceps and all the other stuff that you're going to need while you're out there, all attached to the bag. And it is this sort of, self-contained system. I can pick it up. I could take it on a day trip. I can pick it up and put it in a backpack for a backpacking trip. I can just stick it on my belt because it's got a little belt loop on it for a real quick car fishing trip. It's a beautiful system. It's super duper easy to carry, but it's obviously with me every time so that I have my flies and I have my fishing gear when I get up to the lake because obviously I am there to fish. That's why I'm there. It's what I want to do, and I want to make sure I can do that the way that the fish ask me to. We'll talk more about that later. I have ways that I prefer to fish. One of those ways is obviously dry fly fishing. Everybody loves dry fly fishing, but sometimes I don't get to do that. I got to throw wet flies, or I got to throw streamers, or I got a nymph, or I got to tie on a size 26 zebra midge. God help me. But I like to have that stuff because if I'm going to put the time and the effort to hike into one of these places and get there, I want to make sure that I have the stuff that I need to catch a fish. I don't want to leave, getting skunked and feeling like, man, if I had just had this one other thing, I might have been able to make it happen. So that's really kind of it. That's my system. There are a few other things that you might throw in there. I carry hand warmers in the winter or in cold environments. I carry gloves in the winter or in cold environments because it sucks when you have cold hands. I'm also not hiking super far most of the time unless I'm snowshoeing. That's a whole nother topic of conversation. But there's some other stuff. You may add some things to this. There may be a few things that you decide to subtract from this thing. I would be very cautious, as I said in the beginning, about taking anything out of here. I think most of it is required, weighs a little bit. I get it. It's a lot of stuff to carry for a day trip. It's also really not. You can fit it into a medium sized backpack. Probably isn't going to weigh more than 20 pounds ish. Uh, if you're in reasonable shape, you're going to be fine. So, we can talk at another point about hiking in waders or carrying your waders. We can talk about carrying wading boots and sandals and things like that. There are circumstances and situations where I will carry those things with me if I'm going to a lake that demands waders and wading boots, or if I think I might wade, but I'm not sure, I might carry sandals. There's some other stuff that you can kind of make your best decision about, and we'll talk about that in a future episode. As far as the gear that you need to do certain types of fishing in certain types of water. But as a baseline, this is what's in my pack. So it stays packed all the time. It sits in the specific place in my office. I always know where it is. And when it's time to go, I just grab my bag and go. I don't have to repack it every time. I don't have to go through it and unpack it every time. Those are, number one, inconvenient and annoying. Number two, they're an invitation to forget something and to get something wrong, which could be real bad news. I just leave it all together, and it just sits there as a self-contained system. I can pick it up. I can throw it in the truck. I can hit the road. No muss, no fuss. I refill stuff when it runs out. I change out the food. I change out the water. But otherwise, it is all there. But that's what it looks like. And actually, real quickly, along with your rods and your reels, I didn't mention one other very important piece of equipment. You do need to carry a net. We'll talk more about types of nets at a future date, but you do need to carry a net with you. It needs to be a rubberized net that isn't going to rip the slime off of the fish and hurt them. It needs to have a leash on it that is attached to your backpack, because it is 100% going to get hung up in trees and bushes, and it's going to come out and you're not going to know about it. And if you don't have a leash on it, you're going to lose your net. And that sucks because they're expensive and they also usually have sentimental value. Carry a net with you always, anytime you're fishing, no matter what. You can stick it in the same water bottle pack as your fly rods and have a leash on it so that you don't lose that thing when you're tromping around in the forest. I definitely needed to mention that one. So sorry about that. That little piece of forgetfulness on my part. But so that's it. That's what I carry on a day trip. That's what's in my backpack. You can set up your own system. You'll find one that works for you. But if you want to be safe and well prepared out there and have a good time and have everything you need to have fun, this is what it looks like. I think it's probably pretty close to what it'll look like for you too. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you can come away with some new ideas and some thoughts about stuff that maybe you don't have or stuff that you don't need or anything else. Shoot me a line. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. As always, appreciate you listening and appreciate you taking the time to think through this stuff with me and enjoy this sport with me. And most of all, be who you are and do what you're doing. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time. Until next time, this is Ross. Maybe I'll see you out there, but hopefully not.